The evening sun lay low over the New Mexico territory, bleeding its last red light across the mesas. Dust shimmered like smoke above the flat, cracked earth. The wind came from the west, whispering through the sparse sagebrush, carrying with it the scent of rain that would never come. Down the winding trail, a lone figure appeared, a woman, young but worn by miles. Her dress was torn and grayed with dust, her bonnet crooked from travel. She walked as if each step was an effort of will. In her arms, wrapped in a blanket of faded calico, she held a small baby pressed close to her chest. Her name was Evelyn Carter. She had not spoken it aloud in days. Her throat was too dry for names and her heart too full of ghosts. Ahead lay the Apache settlement, its low fires flickering in the growing dusk, smoke curling into the rose-colored sky. Dogs barked as she neared, and shadows rose among the huts, men with wary eyes, their rifles gleaming dull in the fading light. She stopped short, her knees nearly buckling. The child stirred and whimpered. Evelyn adjusted the blanket and forced herself forward. The men said nothing as she approached. One of them, older, his hair streaked with silver, stepped closer. His gaze moved from her to the bundle in her arms. "I come in peace," Evelyn said softly. Her voice cracked from dust. "I seek a man named Katan." At the sound of that name, the murmuring stopped. Faces hardened. The elder's eyes narrowed. "Why do you seek Katan?" Evelyn swallowed, her lips trembling. "He saved my life once. I must see him again." The elder studied her, then turned and gave a sharp whistle. From the far end of the camp, a tall man emerged from the shadows. His stride was long, his shoulders broad, his dark hair bound in a single braid that brushed his back. His face was marked by the harsh beauty of the desert, strong cheekbones, a jaw cut from stone, and eyes like obsidian, still and deep. Katan stopped several paces from her, arms crossed over his chest. His gaze swept over her face, then the child. His expression did not change. Evelyn's knees weakened at the sight of him. For months she had dreamed of this man, the one who had carried her from death's edge, whose quiet voice had once been her only comfort in the wilderness. "Katan," she whispered. "You remember me," he said nothing. The wind lifted a lock of his hair. The firelight caught in his eyes, but they showed no warmth. "I had nowhere else to go," she said. "You told me once your people would not turn away a woman in need." Still silence, then finally his voice, low, rough, like stones shifting in a dry riverbed. "Why do you come here?" Evelyn's breath trembled. "Because I bear your child." A ripple of sound moved through the watching crowd. Gasps, murmurs, a few curses muttered under breath. Katan's expression didn't flicker at first, but his jaw tightened, his hand resting near the knife at his belt. "She's not my wife," he said flatly, his words cut through the gathering like a blade. Evelyn flinched, the baby stirring in her arms. "Katan," she began, but he turned away from her as though ashamed even to be near. "She's not my wife," he repeated, louder this time. "Whatever she says is a lie." But when the baby whimpered, the sound carried softly across the camp. The infant's face turned upward, dark lashes, dark hair, and skin kissed by the same sun that had shaped Katan's people for centuries. The Apache elder looked from the child to Katan, his face unreadable. "If she lies," the old man said quietly, "then the Great Spirit plays cruel tricks with blood." Katan's eyes darkened. He turned on his heel and strode toward his hut, his voice hard. "Give her food. Let her rest. But when the sun rises, she goes." Evelyn watched him disappear into the shadows. Her lips parted as though to call after him, but no sound came. A young Apache woman approached and touched Evelyn's arm gently. "Come," she said in broken English. "You and the little one need fire." Inside a small hut, Evelyn sat on a mat near the flames, cradling the baby close. The child's breathing steadied, soft and rhythmic, and the glow of the fire painted her tiny features in amber. Evelyn's eyes stung with tears. How could he deny them? He had held her in his arms once, whispered words in his own tongue she hadn't understood but had felt deep in her soul. That winter night in the canyon, when snow fell silent over the world, he had kissed her hair and promised safety. She had believed him. Now she was a stranger once more. Outside, she heard the distant rhythm of a drum, the low hum of men's voices. She closed her eyes, the memory of Katan's voice haunting her. "She's not my wife." But she could not blame him entirely. The gulf between them was wide as the desert itself, white woman and Apache warrior, two worlds doomed to fear each other. Yet the child in her arms was proof of something beyond fear, beyond war. She pressed her lips to the baby's head. "He'll see," she whispered. "He'll remember." That night, K-10 stood alone by the river, the moon a pale ghost above the canyon rim. The sound of the water filled the silence he could not bear. His heart ached, though he tried to steal it. He remembered the woman's eyes, the warmth of her laughter during those few weeks they'd shared under the stars, the way she had trusted him when no one else would. But that trust had been a mistake. A man like him had no right to cross that line again. He had lost too much already. His wife, his tribe's respect, his own peace. Now she had returned, carrying what she claimed was his blood. He wanted to believe her, yet belief was dangerous. When the first light of dawn touched the sky, K-10 turned back toward the village. He would face her one last time. He would tell her to leave, for her sake and for his own. But as he walked past the elder's hut, he heard the sound of a baby's laughter, a soft, bubbling giggle that pierced the morning like sunlight through storm clouds. He froze. He turned his head slightly and saw Evelyn sitting just beyond the fire, her hair loose around her shoulders, golden in the light. The baby reached up toward her, grasping her finger with a tiny hand. Evelyn smiled through tears. Something in K-10's chest shifted, something he had thought long dead. He looked away quickly and strode past, his expression unreadable. But the elder, watching from the shadows, saw the truth in his eyes. When Evelyn lifted her gaze, K-10 was already gone, but she knew then that this wasn't over. Not yet, because the desert remembers, and so do the hearts that have loved beneath its unforgiving sky. The morning sun rose over the desert like a fiery coin, casting gold across the plains. Smoke drifted lazily from the Apache campfires, the air filled with the smell of roasted corn and pine smoke. Somewhere in the distance, coyotes called to one another, their cries fading into the canyons. Evelyn sat near the fire, the baby nestled against her chest, staring at the empty space where K-10 had stood before disappearing into the hills. He had not spoken to her since the night she arrived. He was a ghost moving between tents, a man who spoke little even to his own people. The Apache women had given Evelyn food, water, and a place to rest. They treated her with wary kindness, though whispers followed her wherever she went. White woman, his woman, the one with the half-blood child. When the elders passed, they did not meet her eyes. Only one among them, a soft-spoken elder named Nietzsche, offered her quiet comfort. He brought her herbs for the baby's fever and told her where the river flowed clean beyond the eastern rocks. "Water will speak," he told her, "if your heart listens." That afternoon, Evelyn went there, the river gleaming silver beneath the sun, weaving its way through the red earth. She sat on a smooth boulder, dipping her feet into the cold current. The baby cooed softly in her lap, her tiny hand splashing at the ripples. Evelyn's heart felt both heavy and light. Heavy with rejection, light with the fragile hope that K-10 might come. She whispered to the wind as if he might hear her. "He used to come to the water, didn't he?" The baby blinked, her dark eyes reflecting the sunlight. "Yes," Evelyn said softly. "He used to come for peace." The sound of footsteps behind her made her turn. K-10 stood there, arms crossed, eyes dark beneath the brim of shadow. His expression was unreadable, though a muscle twitched in his jaw. "I told you to leave," he said. His voice was quiet, but his tone carried the weight of command. Evelyn rose slowly, clutching the baby. "And go where, K-10? Back to the world that hates me? To men who'd call this child a curse?" His gaze flicked toward the baby, then back to her. "She will not be safe here. My people do not trust outsiders, but you once did," she said. "You trusted me enough to save my life." His jaw tightened. "That was different." "No, it wasn't." Evelyn's voice trembled. "You think I don't remember? The night by the fire when you said I belonged to the stars as much as you did, when you said the desert didn't care about blood, only spirit?" K-10's eyes darkened with something deeper than anger. Pain, perhaps, or memory. "You should not speak of that time," he said. "But I must," Evelyn pressed, "because that time gave me her." She held the baby out toward him. "Look at her, K-10. Look at her and tell me she isn't yours." He hesitated, the faintest flicker in his expression betraying his inner turmoil. The wind rustled through the cottonwoods, scattering leaves like whispered secrets. Slowly, Caton stepped forward. For a moment he stood still, then extended a hand toward the child. Evelyn's heart stopped as his fingers brushed the baby's cheek. The child reached out and grasped one of his fingers, holding it tight. Caton froze. The world seemed to still around him. The sound of the river faded, replaced by the distant memory of another life, a softer voice, a smaller hand. His first daughter, the one he'd lost years ago when the soldiers came. His breath caught and he pulled his hand back as if burned. "She is not mine," he whispered hoarsely. "I have no family, no wife, no child." Evelyn's voice broke with emotion. "Then what am I to you, a ghost? A mistake you wish forgotten?" He turned away, his shoulders rigid. "A man who carries death cannot carry love, Evelyn. You do not know what you ask, but she did. She knew too well." Her mind drifted back to that winter months ago, the storm that had swept through the high desert, her stagecoach overturned, her husband, a soldier, lying dead in the snow. She had wandered half-mad with grief and fever until Caton found her, a wounded bird beneath the pines. He had carried her to his hidden camp, tended her wounds with herbs and patience, and guarded her through the long nights when her body burned with fever. She had learned his ways, his quiet strength, the silence that came from years of loss. He had told her little of his past, but she had seen the scars, on his back, on his heart. He had once fought beside white men as a scout, had watched both sides commit sins neither could forgive. His people called him a traitor. The soldiers called him savage. He belonged nowhere. And yet in those short weeks they had built something like peace. They had shared food, laughter, stories. One night when loneliness grew too great, they had shared warmth, an act born of need and tenderness more than passion. In the morning, he was gone. Now, months later, Evelyn faced him again, her voice trembling like the water around her feet. "You think the past can be buried, Caton, but it's here. In her eyes. In her blood. You can deny me all you want, but you cannot deny her." Caton's silence stretched long. Then he turned to the river, watching its endless flow. "The river remembers everything," he murmured. "It carries the blood of those who lived, those who died, those who loved and were foolish enough to hope." Evelyn stepped closer. "Then let it carry us too." He shook his head. "A river can wash away many things. Not shame." Her voice softened. "You saved me once. Don't let your pride destroy what's left of us." Caton looked at her then, and for a brief, fragile moment the mask slipped. She saw the man beneath, the one who had once smiled at her laughter, who had brushed snow from her hair and whispered her name as if it were sacred. But then the mask returned. He set his shoulders. "You and the child will have shelter until you are strong enough to leave. After that you must go." Evelyn's heart cracked. Tears gathered in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Then I'll stay by the river. It's kinder than the world, and it remembers love even when men forget." She turned and walked away, her steps slow but steady. The baby stirred in her arms, murmuring softly, and Evelyn whispered, "Hush now, Ayana. Someday he'll know." Caton stood watching her until she disappeared behind the rocks. Then he dropped to one knee beside the river and plunged his hands into the cold water. The shock of it made him gasp. He looked down at his reflection, a warrior haunted by choices. When he finally lifted his gaze to the horizon, the wind had changed. Clouds gathered in the west, heavy with rain. Caton rose slowly, his heart torn between duty and desire. Somewhere deep inside, he already knew he would not let her go. Because love, like the river, had a way of carving through even the hardest stone. A storm was building over the New Mexico territory, not one of rain, but of men. By midsummer, word had spread across the desert like wildfire. An Apache warrior had fathered a white woman's child. Soldiers whispered it in their camps. Merchants in the border towns spoke of it with disgust. And among the Apache, the rumor burned like a curse. Caton knew it before the first scout brought news. He could feel the tension crackling through the air, the disapproving stares of his people, the whispers that followed him wherever he went. "Caton has forgotten his blood," they said. "He carries shame on his shoulders. He protects the white woman." Evelyn felt it too. The stares, the silence when she walked past, the mothers who pulled their children away. Even the women who once offered her food now turned aside. Only Nietzsche, the old healer, spoke to her openly, telling her stories to calm her restless heart. "Love is a dangerous fire," he said one evening as they sat beside the flames. "It can warm a man's spirit or burn his world to ash." Evelyn looked toward the shadowed edge of the camp where Caton stood alone, staring out toward the horizon. "Then let it burn," she murmured, "because I am already ash without him." The next morning, the chief, Chewani, summoned Caton before the council of elders. The men sat in a semicircle around the central fire, their faces grave. The chief, his long braids streaked with gray, spoke slowly. "You have broken the oath of the people," Chewani said. "You have taken the woman of another race. You have brought her child among us. This cannot be." Caton met his gaze steadily. "She came to us in need. I will not send her to die among men who hate her." The chief's eyes narrowed. "You protect her because she bears your blood." Caton did not answer. His silence was answer enough. "Then you must choose," Chewani said, "your people or the woman. If you choose her, you turn your back on the blood of your ancestors." Caton's jaw tightened. "And if I choose you, I turn my back on my heart." The old men muttered among themselves. The fire crackled between them, sparks spiraling upward into the night. Finally, Chewani spoke again. "If your heart is bound to her, then it will destroy you. You will lose the respect of your people. The spirits will not protect you." Caton lowered his gaze. "They stopped protecting me long ago." That night he went to Evelyn's hut. The baby slept beside her, tiny breaths rising and falling. Caton crouched near the doorway, the firelight dancing over his face. Evelyn looked up at him. "They called you before the council," she said softly. "I heard," he nodded. "They want you gone." Her throat tightened. "And what do you want, Caton?" He hesitated. Then he said the words he'd kept buried for too long. "What I want does not matter. I made a blood oath once, long before I met you." Evelyn frowned. "What oath?" Caton's gaze drifted to the fire. "When my first wife, Noya, was killed by soldiers, I swore before the spirits that my heart would die with hers. I would never again take a wife, never love again until the day I joined her in the next world." He looked at Evelyn, pain etched deep in his face. "And then you came. You broke that oath without knowing it." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "Then break it again. Break it for her sake." She nodded toward the baby. Caton shook his head. "A man cannot undo what he has promised to the dead." "Then you'll spend your life haunted by ghosts," she whispered, "while the living fade away." Caton rose and turned toward the door. "You must leave this place, Evelyn. Before my people force you to." She stood too, her voice trembling but fierce. "I will not run again. I've buried too much already, got it, my husband, my home, my peace. I won't bury love too." Caton turned back, his expression unreadable. "Love will not save you here, but it saved you," she said. "It made you fight, it made you protect. It made you human again." Her words struck him like a blow. For a moment he saw it. The truth he'd been running from. He loved her, and no oath could change that. But before he could speak, a shout echoed outside. The crack of gunfire split the night. Caton's instincts took over. He grabbed Evelyn's arm and pulled her down just as bullets tore through the walls. The baby screamed. Evelyn clutched her tight, heart pounding. "Soldiers," Caton hissed. They found the camp. The Apache warriors rushed to meet the attack, their cries mingling with the roar of gunfire. Flames lit the night as tents burned. Caton seized his rifle and fired into the darkness, each shot precise, deadly. Evelyn huddled behind a rock, shielding the baby. She could see flashes of Caton's figure moving like a shadow through the chaos. Fierce, relentless. But the soldiers were too many. They pushed into the camp, torches in hand, shouting curses. Evelyn felt hands grab her arm, dragging her to her feet. She screamed, twisting free. A soldier raised his rifle, and then Caton was there, his knife flashing. The man fell. Caton caught Evelyn's hand. "Come!" They ran toward the river, the baby's cries echoing against the rocks. The smoke choked the air, fire lighting the night behind them. They reached the riverbank, breathless. The current roared before them, swollen from recent rain. Caton turned to her. "There is a canyon beyond this water. A place only I know. We'll be safe there." He lifted the baby into his arms, then helped Evelyn across the river, guiding her against the current. When they reached the far side, they collapsed beneath the cliffs, gasping for breath. Evelyn's dress was torn, her hair wild in the wind. She looked at Caton, his chest heaving, blood streaking his shoulder. "You're hurt," she said. "It is nothing." She reached out, touching the wound. "You can't keep fighting the whole world, Caton. He caught her hand and held it there. The world has already taken everything. I will not let it take you too. Their eyes met, and in that moment the world fell silent, the fire, the gunfire, the wind. Only the river's whisper remained, soft and eternal. Evelyn leaned forward, tears glistening on her cheeks. Then stop fighting me. Stop fighting love, Ketan hesitated. The old promise to his dead wife echoed in his heart. Never again. But the woman before him, fragile yet fierce, was no betrayal of the past. She was the living proof that love could rise from ashes. He lowered his head and kissed her. Not gently, but with the hunger of a man who'd been starving for years. When they parted, Evelyn whispered, "What will we do now?" He looked toward the horizon where the first faint light of dawn touched the canyon walls. "Now," he said quietly, "we hide." But deep down, both of them knew hiding would not last forever. The world would come again with guns, with hate, with vengeance. And when it did, blood would be spilled once more. Ketan tightened his grip on his rifle. "If war comes," he murmured, "then let it find me between them and you." Evelyn pressed the baby closer. "And if love comes?" He looked at her, his eyes dark and fierce. "Then let it break every oath I ever made." The desert was quiet after the storm of gunfire. Only the wind remained, sifting through the canyon like a soft lament. The air smelled of dust, smoke, and blood. Ketan stumbled as he led Evelyn deeper into the ravine, his shoulder slick with crimson where the bullet had grazed him. The child whimpered softly in Evelyn's arms. The moon hung pale and ghostly above, lighting the jagged rocks like bones. When they reached the hollow of an old cave, once a shelter for his mother in her wandering years, Ketan sank to his knees. His breath came hard and shallow. Evelyn dropped beside him, her hands trembling as she pressed a torn cloth to his wound. "Stay still," she whispered. Ketan grimaced but said nothing. The firelight flickered against his skin, turning his sweat into bronze. Evelyn tore another strip from her dress, soaking it in the cool water she'd gathered from a nearby pool. She worked quickly, her fingers deft but tender. "You're losing too much blood," she said. "I need to close the wound." He caught her wrist weakly. "You should take the child and go." Evelyn's eyes flashed. "And leave you to die? After everything?" "No, Ketan. I didn't cross deserts and bullets just to bury another man I love." His eyes opened at that last word, love. The firelight deepened the shadows in his face. "You should not say that," he murmured. "Love brings curses." Evelyn's voice softened, but her hands did not stop working. "Love brings life. Look at her." She nodded toward the baby, sleeping now beside the fire. "She is no curse. She's proof that something good can grow out of all this sorrow." Ketan said nothing. His eyes had gone unfocused, fixed on some memory far away. Evelyn leaned close, her voice trembling. "Ketan, stay with me. Don't fade away, please." Her plea pulled him back. He looked into her eyes, saw tears clinging to her lashes, and felt a warmth deeper than any fever. "I once thought death was my only truth," he said quietly. "But you make me question that." She smiled through her tears. "Then live, Ketan. Live and question everything." For 3 days the canyon became their world. The wind sang through the rocks, the river whispered below, and Ketan's strength returned little by little. Evelyn kept a fire burning, hunted quail when she could, and sang to the baby in soft tones that reminded Ketan of his own mother's voice. At night, when the stars spread wide over the black sky, Evelyn would sit beside him, the baby asleep between them. The silence between their words carried its own language. On the third night, Ketan spoke. "I dreamed," he said. Evelyn turned toward him. "Of what?" "Of Noya, my first wife." His voice was soft, reverent. "She stood by the great river of the ancestors. She looked at me and said, 'The living do not belong to the dead, Ketan. Let go.'" Evelyn's eyes shimmered. "And did you?" "I tried." He looked at her then, his gaze deep and searching. "But I did not expect to find life waiting for me again." Evelyn reached for his hand. "She wouldn't want you to die alone in your sorrow. She'd want you to live." He turned his hand, threading his fingers through hers. "Maybe the spirit sent you. Maybe they grew tired of watching me wander with an empty heart." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Then let's not waste the gift they gave us." For the first time in many years, Ketan laughed, low, rough, and full of disbelief. It startled him more than her. The sound echoed off the canyon walls like the memory of joy. That night, as the fire dimmed, Evelyn drifted to sleep with her head against his shoulder, the baby between them. Katan sat awake, watching the flames die, feeling something stir inside him, something he thought he had buried forever. Love, yes. But more than that, hope. By the 5th morning, Katan's wound had closed enough for him to walk again. They climbed from the canyon to the high desert plain, the world vast and golden before them. The horizon shimmered with heat. Evelyn shaded her eyes. Where will we go now? Katan looked toward the distant ridges. There is a spring beyond the painted hills. My mother's people once lived there. If any still remain, they will help us. Evelyn nodded, shifting the baby in her arms. And after that? He looked at her then, long and hard. After that, we face what comes. The journey was harsh. The sun burned mercilessly by day, the cold bit deep by night. But Evelyn did not falter. She carried the child when Katan grew weary, and Katan hunted when her strength waned. They moved as one, partners in survival, bound not by ceremony but by endurance. One evening, as they made camp near a line of red cliffs, a storm began to roll in from the west. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the desert in bursts of white fire. The baby whimpered. Evelyn clutched her close, whispering softly, "It's all right, Ayanna. The storm will pass." Katan looked toward the dark horizon. "Storms always pass," he said. "But they change the land," he turned to her. "When the rain ends, I will go back to the settlement. I will speak to the elders." Evelyn's heart seized. "Katan, they'll kill you." "Maybe." His voice was calm, almost resigned. "But I cannot hide forever. If I run, they will keep hunting. If I stay silent, they will keep fearing. I must make them see the truth. And what truth is that? That love is not the enemy." He looked at her, eyes fierce despite the weariness. "That what we made, what we are, is not shame." Evelyn shook her head, tears rising. "You don't have to prove anything to them." "Yes, I do," he said. "For her." His gaze fell to the baby sleeping between them. "So she can grow up in a world that does not spit on her blood." Evelyn reached out, touching his cheek. "If you go, I go with you." Katan took her hand, pressing it to his heart. "If I fall, you must protect her." "Promise me." She gripped his fingers tightly. "I won't make a promise that means losing you." He gave a faint smile, the kind that reached only halfway to his eyes. "Then promise to live." Evelyn leaned forward and kissed him, slowly, deeply, as thunder rolled over the desert. The rain began to fall, warm and soft, washing over them like a baptism. For a moment, time held still. Katan broke the kiss, resting his forehead against hers. "Tomorrow we go back." Evelyn closed her eyes. "Then tonight let the world forget us. Just for a while." They lay together beneath a crude shelter of hides, the storm singing above them. The desert, vast and ancient, bore witness as two broken souls found peace, however brief, in each other's arms. When morning came, the storm had passed. The air was fresh, scented with wet earth. Katan stood at the edge of the cliff, the sunrise painting his face in gold. Evelyn joined him, the baby stirring against her shoulder. He looked at them, mother and child, and whispered something in Apache, a prayer carried softly by the wind. "What did you say?" Evelyn asked. He smiled faintly. "That the spirits may walk with us, for we go now to face truth in the open." And as they started down the trail toward the village, Evelyn knew that whatever waited, love or death, it would no longer be hidden in the shadows, because the desert had stripped away everything false. What remained was truth, raw and unyielding. The trail back to the Apache settlement wound through the valley like a scar across the land. The air was sharp that morning, clean after the storm, carrying the scent of wet sage and mesquite. Katan walked ahead, his rifle slung across his back, his pace steady but heavy with purpose. Evelyn followed, the baby in her arms swaddled against the cool wind. They had been traveling for hours when the first wisps of smoke appeared on the horizon, the signal fires of Katan's people. Evelyn's stomach tightened. Every step closer felt like walking toward judgment. Katan stopped at the ridge and looked down at the familiar circle of huts, the small fields beyond where women worked. Children played and the men trained with spears. Once this had been his home. Now it felt like the edge of the gallows. Evelyn came to stand beside him. "It's not too late to turn back," she said softly. Katan shook his head. If I turn back now, I'll spend the rest of my life running from what I am. He looked at her, the dust on her cheeks, the sunburn along her neck, the fire still burning behind her tired eyes. You and the child deserve to be seen. If they choose hate, then let it fall on me, not you. Evelyn swallowed hard. Whatever happens, we face it together. He gave a single nod. Together, then. When they entered the settlement, silence swept through the camp like a cold wind. Every head turned. Mothers pulled their children aside. Men rose from where they sat, sharpening blades. At the center of the village, the elders gathered, among them Chief Chiwani and old Naiche, whose wise eyes flickered with sorrow and something like pity. Caton stopped a few paces from the fire circle and laid his rifle down on the ground. His voice when he spoke was clear and strong. I have come to speak truth before my people. Chiwani rose, his face hard as stone. You defied the council's word. You brought shame and war to our door. You chose the enemy over your own blood. Caton met his gaze without flinching. I chose life over death, love over bitterness. The crowd stirred uneasily. Murmurs rippled like wind through dry grass. Evelyn stepped forward, clutching the baby. He did not choose me out of betrayal, she said, her voice trembling but sure. He saved me when others would have left me to die. I was his enemy once, yeah, but the world gave us nothing but hate. We found something different. Chiwani's expression darkened. You bring a half-blood child into our village and ask us to call it good? Evelyn looked down at her daughter, whose dark lashes fluttered as she slept. I don't ask you to call it anything, she said quietly. I only ask you to look. She stepped closer to the fire, lifting the baby high so all could see. The light danced across the child's face. Soft brown skin, the faint curl of dark hair, eyes that opened just then, reflecting both mother and father in one innocent gaze. Look at her, Evelyn said. She carries both our worlds. She is not a curse. She is a bridge. A long silence followed. Even the wind seemed to still. Caton stepped to her side. When I took the blood oath years ago, I swore never to love again, he said. But the Great Spirit showed me that love cannot be buried with the dead. I broke that oath, and I do not regret it. Because from it came this child, who carries the spirit of peace our people have forgotten. Chiwani's eyes burned. You speak of peace while soldiers hunt us. While our sons die because of their greed? Caton took a deep breath. And how long will we fight before there is nothing left to protect? How long will hate feed hate? He looked around the circle, meeting each man's gaze. If my blood is the price for love, then take it. But do not call her unworthy. He sank to one knee, bowing his head. I stand before you not as a warrior or traitor, but as a man who dares to hope. Evelyn's heart clenched. She stepped beside him, placing her free hand on his shoulder. And I stand with him. If he dies for this truth, then I die too. The crowd gasped. For a moment, the chief's expression was unreadable. The fire crackled between them, the smoke rising toward a sky that seemed to hold its breath. Then old Naiche, the healer, rose slowly to his feet. His voice, though cracked with age, carried the weight of wisdom. I have lived long enough to see many wars, he said. I have buried sons and grandsons, seen rivers run red with blood, but I have never seen hate give life. He stepped closer to the baby, studying her face. This child bears no shame. She bears only promise. The Great Spirit does not divide what love has made one. He turned to Chiwani. If we deny them, we deny the sun that rises over us all. The old man placed his hand gently on the baby's forehead, marking it with a line of ash from the fire, the Apache sign of belonging. This one, he said solemnly, is of our blood. A hush fell. Even Chiwani bowed his head, his defiance softening like ice under the sun. Caton lifted his gaze, disbelief flickering in his eyes. Evelyn's tears fell freely now, landing on the baby's blanket. Slowly, the murmurs around them shifted. First confusion, then understanding. A few women nodded. One man stepped forward and placed his hand over his heart. Caton rose, his voice hoarse. Then I am no longer bound by shame. He turned to Evelyn, emotion breaking through his composure at last. Before my people, before the spirits, before the land itself, I name you my wife. The air trembled with the weight of it. Evelyn stared at him, stunned, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. Caton reached out and touched her cheek. You walked through fire to bring me truth, he said. You carried my blood when I had none left to give. You gave me back my soul. Evelyn placed her hand over his. You gave me back my life. He turned then to the crowd. This is my family. The blood of my blood. The heart of my heart. Naiche raised his staff and spoke a final blessing. Then let the spirits witness it. What was broken is made whole. The drums began slowly, a rhythm that had not been heard in years, one of peace instead of war. The people gathered closer, some hesitant, others smiling faintly as if unsure whether to believe what they saw. Evelyn looked around, awe washing over her. The fear she had carried for so long began to slip away, replaced by something gentler, belonging. Caton took the baby in his arms. The little girl blinked up at him, cooing softly. For the first time he allowed himself to smile fully. Her name, he said, is Ayana, eternal blossom. May she grow where love once could not. The people murmured the name, repeating it softly like a prayer. Evelyn leaned against him, her heart swelling as the drums echoed through the twilight. You once said I was not your wife, she whispered, her voice trembling. Caton looked down at her, eyes warm with emotion. I was a fool. You were never anything less. He bent and kissed her forehead, the sun dipping low behind them, setting the desert aflame in red and gold. As the drums beat on, Evelyn rested her head against his chest. The baby slept between them, safe and silent, her small hand curled around her father's finger. The world beyond might still burn with hate, but here in this circle of dust and light, peace had been born, fragile yet fierce, like a wildflower blooming after rain. And when the last rays of sun sank below the horizon, Caton's voice broke the silence once more, no longer a denial, but a vow that carried through the stillness. She's not my wife? He smiled faintly, his eyes glistening. No, she's my destiny.